Let's face it, interest rates are pathetic, and they have been for over a decade. Cash is a guaranteed losing position. If a person keeps any significant portion of their savings in cash, they are guaranteed to lose money to price inflation over time. Right now, the average rate of return on savings deposits is 0.05%. Price levels, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, are increasing at an annual rate of 1.3%. And this is using the new CPI index, which is geometrically weighted and includes a substitution effect. A person who wants to hold some cash will see their purchasing power erode by at least 1% or 2% every year. As all of my long-term subscribers are aware, I'm not a fan of the Federal Reserve note. I believe our credit-based money system is a castle built on a foundation of sand, which is why I'm an advocate that everyone should hold some gold. At the same time, I'm also a pragmatist. I know that gold's purchasing power fluctuates significantly over time. When public confidence in the financial system wanes, gold's purchasing power can increase by a great deal. The inverse turns out to be true as well, that when public confidence grows, gold's purchasing power can decline by a great deal. So a person is well served owning gold as part of his or her wealth, but a person shouldn't shun all other assets without being extremely confident that the financial system will collapse imminently. I think cash has its place as a liquidity buffer. As I've stated in previous videos, having some cash can help reduce the risk of having to sell other assets at an unfortunate time. Cash provides options. Holding a little cash is wise. But how does one avoid holding a cash position that is guaranteed to lose in purchasing power the longer it's held? How does one generate a return on cash that is sufficient to keep up with price inflation in a world where the Federal Reserve is holding interest rates at zero? In this video, I will show you a way. Fair warning though, if you don't think owning cash has any utility, then you can stop the video here and wait for the next one. For this exercise, let's make some assumptions. Let's assume that you have a 401k and already own some equity index funds inside the 401k. Let's further assume that it's a Russell 1000 Value Index fund that has a dividend yield of 2.6% and an estimated rate of price increase of 4.18%. Note that the price appreciation is in nominal dollars, not inflation-adjusted dollars, since nominal gains are what is taxed. We'll assume that you'll be in the 12% federal tax bracket and the 6.09% state tax bracket when you withdraw the funds from the 401k. If these numbers don't apply to you, then you can always change them and run your own calculations. We'll also assume that you have available to you, as I do, a stable value fund in your 401k. Stable value funds are interesting. They seem to only be offered inside employer-sponsored 401k plans. They consist mainly of funding agreements with banks and insurance companies and have a higher interest rate than you can get by lending money to the bank yourself. In this case, the interest rate after expenses is 2%. The nice thing about a stable value fund is that it is designed to not fluctuate in price as interest rates change. This makes it different from a bond fund. For the purposes of this exercise, it can be considered completely liquid. The 2% available from the stable value fund is quite attractive in today's rate environment, but a person might think, geez, I don't want to waste my 401k space by holding a low-yielding investment inside of it. A person might also think, placing my liquid funds inside of a 401k fund, or a 401k, is going to instantly make them non-liquid. After all, I can access these funds outside of the 401k without a severe 10% tax penalty before I turn age 59 and a half. But wait, here's where the magic comes in. Let's create an operation that will give a person access to the liquidity and interest income available from the stable value fund inside of the 401k without the perceived nasty side effects just mentioned. So let's say you have $10,000 in your bank account that you want to keep on hand for emergencies, but you're annoyed that you get no interest on this money at all. Let's take this $10,000 and buy an equivalent stock fund to the one that you have inside your 401k. The dividend yield and the rate of price appreciation are the same as they would be inside the tax-sheltered 401k. However, the fund is taxed differently. Most people won't pay federal tax on qualified stock dividends. For example, a married couple filing jointly with an income under $92,400 will have a 0% tax rate on dividend income. The state tax rate on dividends will assume is the same as the state income tax rate. This favorable tax rate on stocks held outside of the 401k is important because, as you'll see, it actually makes the effective interest rate on this cash movement operation more favorable than it appears. Now, there's more to the operation. We need to sell $10,000 of the stock fund inside of the 401k and place the proceeds in the stable value fund. And this is where the money will stay unless and until an emergency comes up that requires the spending of the money. Speaking of which, what would a person do if access to the cash was desired before age 59 and a half? It's actually pretty simple. The stocks outside of the 401k can be liquidated and an equivalent amount of money transferred from the stable value fund to the stock fund inside the 401k. Thus, the stock position is maintained intact. Wait a minute, Blank P. What if I need the money and the value of the stock fund is down at the time? You said this operation would allow me to access my funds and at the same time avoid selling stocks at a loss. Ah, you bring up a fair point. Let's assume stocks are down 30% when you need the money. How would we be able to handle that? Assuming there were no dividend distributions between the time the money was moved to the stable value fund and when it is needed, which is the worst case, we'd have $7,000 worth of stocks in the unsheltered account to sell. If we needed the full $10,000 emergency fund, then we'd have to take a $3,000 distribution from the 401k and move $7,000 back to the stock fund. Assuming you're younger than 59 and a half years old, you'd pay an additional 10% penalty on top of your federal tax. This would result in a total tax on the $3,000 withdrawn of $843. But notice that the $7,000 of stock that you sold generates a $3,000 capital loss. This capital loss can be deducted from income. The tax write-off is worth $543. Thus, the penalty of accessing the funds early is only $300, which is the $843 in tax for the withdrawal from the 401k minus the $543 value of the tax write-off for the $3,000 capital loss. And what's $300 in taxes on a cash transaction of $10,000? 3%. So yes, there is a risk of loss involved in this operation if you need the funds back immediately and there is a sudden large drop in the stock market. But it's not a large risk, especially if the emergency in question doesn't require the full emergency fund. Let's see what the expected upside is over the long term. In order to figure out what the expected value of this operation is for longer periods of time, we need a baseline. This is the do-nothing case where we started with $10,000 worth of stock in the 401k and just let it grow over time before withdrawing it later. Notice the initial value is less than $10,000 because when we withdraw the funds, we have to pay taxes on them. Over 20 years, the after-tax value grows, given the listed assumptions, to a little over $30,000. Again, these are nominal numbers, not inflation-adjusted numbers. We pay tax on inflated dollars, not real dollars, unfortunately. Now, let's compare this to what happens when we conduct our operation with the $10,000 that we have available in cash. In this case, the after-tax value starts at $10,000 more than the after-tax value of the do-nothing case. This is the $10,000 that we're about to put to work. After purchasing the $10,000 worth of stock, and in the 401k selling $10,000 from the stock fund and putting it in the stable value fund, the combined after-tax value of the accounts start to grow. We're assuming that we're reinvesting the dividends in the after-tax account just the same as we would have done in the 401k had we left it alone. Of course, taxes on the dividends are paid as they're realized before they can be invested, and this is taken into account. The taxes have to be paid as the dividends are realized. Fortunately, the dividend tax rate is more favorable outside of the 401k. Inside of the 401k, the dividends can compound without the tax drag, but at the end, all of the accumulated dividends are taxed as if they were ordinary income. Price increases outside of the 401k aren't taxed until the fund is sold. Now, let's compare the difference in after-tax funds over time. At time equals 0, the difference in after-tax value is the $10,000 that we'd like to maintain as cash. Over time, the difference grows, indicating that the operation that we've entered into is yielding a return. At year 20, the difference is a little bit over $17,700, and this is a rate of return of 2.9% after tax. In order to achieve the same result, you'd have to find a tax-free cash equivalent that yields 3.54%. Do you know of one? I don't. It's surprising at first that the rate is actually higher than that of the stable value fund in the 401k, until one thinks deeply about how the various assets are taxed. Now, there are some other benefits that I haven't mentioned. One of the big ones in my mind is that over time, this method of storing cash will reduce the total balance inside of the 401k and replace it with a larger balance of unsheltered funds. And why is this important? Well, for one, when a person reaches age 72, they have to start taking mandatory distributions from the 401k and paying taxes on them. This means forced liquidations, which may occur at an unfavorable time and also may result in unpleasant tax consequences. Now, the other advantage that this has is that by having stock funds outside of the 401k, it allows for tax strategies such as capital gains and capital loss harvesting to occur. Now, I won't go into details about them in this video, but believe me, they are very powerful tools and I've used them myself. So there you have it, an operation which can unlock a rate of return on cash without compromising liquidity. Yes, it's a little complicated to analyze, but it's not complicated to employ. I'd encourage anyone who wants to hold some cash to look into their own situation and run some numbers to see if something like this could work for you. Again, I'm not a licensed professional. I'm probably lucky to even be able to tie my own shoes. So be sure to do your own thinking and decide what's right for you. Have a nice weekend, everyone.